everybody. With the circuit today. I'm hearing a little echo. Tim, can you hear
that? No.
Okay, great. It's gone. I don't know where it came from, but praise the Lord, it's gone. Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. What's hot with the circuit today? Let me tell you, we are celebrating Black history. I might as well say Black herstory because we are talking about the Black unicorn. What we've always known to be true, and other people are starting to believe and know what is truth about Black women. We're making history all over the place today. So we have a very special guest that's going to join us. And I'm going to tell you about her in 1 second. But I want to welcome you to the Circuit Presents Virtual Conversations live on every other Friday. And my co-host today is Tim Fryer. You all know him.
Hey, everybody.
He's always good and gives us a lot to chew on. So today he's sitting in as my co-host. I have begged him and prodded him till he agreed to come on and sit with me. So we're excited today that he is joining us. And guess what, Tim?
What's that?
I got some mail.
Oh, that's always good.
So I like it when I get mail, y'all. So let's see what it is. Wait, look. Uh-oh. We got a sneak preview of what it is.
Uh-oh. The great reveal.
Yes. Awesome. I love getting mail. And this, my friends, is a book that was authored by a friend of mine and one of my clients. Is I Love My HBCU. So I actually bought the book a few years ago when they first put it out, and it was paperback. But now they have hardback. They're sending out this fancy mail with all printed nicely and things. So I am totally excited about this opportunity.
That's great packaging.
To share this book with you. It's really good. As you all in it. So as you all know, I am a graduate of a HBCU. So I am thoroughly excited about sharing this book with you. If you have youngsters in your family, nieces, nephews, cousins, children, grab this book and share it with them. I promise you they will enjoy it. So you can check them out on NathalieNelsonParker.com. That's NathalieNelsonParker.com/HBCU. So we're happy when we get happy mail.
Yeah, that's great. I've been seeing so many children's books featuring children of color.
Yes.
And I'm really excited about that. I mean, growing up, we had great books, but not all of them were children of color. And I appreciate that book because not only is it children of color, but now we're looking at institutions of color and allowing the kids to see early on and hear those names and things like that. I think that's pretty awesome.
I do too, Tim, because honestly, I'm glad you said that because I really don't remember any books with kids that look like me, not books when I was that young. So this is pretty awesome. So we got some folks watching us today. Kimberly Hall Tucker says hi, Tim and Candy.
Hey,
Jennifer says hi. My Aunt Jean says good afternoon. Regina Gather says hi.
That's my sister.
Is that your sister? I was just going to say that's your sister. Hi, sister. And she went to NCCU.
Yes.
Caroline Moore sends us love and says hi. She went to FAM. Kimberly Tucker Hall went to FAM. And Jennifer Long went to Hampton. Anya Williams says hi all the way from the West Coast. So are you just waking up, girl? I'm off on the time. Hey, Kelly Bain. Kelly Bain went to Tuskegee University. So we're excited to have all of you with us. This is Virtual Conversations. We come to you every other week with something that will encourage, empower, and hopefully educate you. So we're excited today. And I told you I was going to share what was hot. And it is Black unicorns. And I have a fabulous person joining me today. Her name is Dr. Tammy Brown. And she is an associate professor at the University of Miami in the Oxford, Ohio campus. So I am thoroughly excited to have her join. She is no stranger to my Tuskegee people. Hey, Tammy, there she is. She is related to us because her sister, who is a dear friend of mine, and my sorority sister, Sharnae Brown, is her sister. So we're excited to have her join us. She is a history professor um, in global and intercultural studies.
Nice.
So she's going to have some knowledge on us today. Every time I talk to her, I learn something. So I'm excited for her to share with us today. So when I texted her to say, Tammy, hey, how's your schedule going? Tim, I said, I want to talk about Black unicorns. I said, the magic that's always existed, but now others are starting to believe it. And I said, does that fit in anywhere but what you're doing right now? And she was like, of course. So, Tammy, I know that you've done TED Talks. And so I said, well, I don't want to put any pressure on her if that's not what she's focusing on. But then I thought about it. I said, you're a person of all knowing and everything Black and history. So I figured that you would share some awesome knowledge with us today without stressing you. And you said, sure.
Yes. I say, hey, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I was born to teach. So one of my favorite mantras is stay ready so you don't have to get ready. So I'm ready.
Yes,
did your daddy teach you that?
My dad, he didn't teach me that in particular, like that saying, but my parents stay ready. My dad, he's the king of my dad is a pastor, founded a church in Cincinnati around 35 years ago, Abundant Life Faith Fellowship, self-taught. He didn't go to seminary, self-taught, but also self-taught carpenter. He can fix anything. And he always has the tools. He always says, if you need someone to do some work for you, some contract work, don't trust them if they don't have the right tools. So having the right tools is part of staying ready, right?
Well, the reason I said that, because I could probably guarantee you Tim tells his leadership, stay ready.
Oh, yeah. I say to them in that way, Tammy, I always say, don't get caught getting ready when it's time to be ready.
I like that.
Yeah, when the curtains go up, you got to know your lines.
Yes.
No doubt.
I like that. And thinking about staying ready, I like the way Candy framed this as this is something that if you are African American, you've been aware of these women in your communities and even beyond who are phenomenal, dynamic, intellectual. And I actually use the AKAs of Tuskegee as an example when I'm teaching. I've been teaching now over 12 years. And when I talk about Black excellence, when I talk about Black women, movers and shakers, Tuskegee AKAs are at the top of my list. I say, these women who went to school with my sister, they're dynamic, beautiful inside and out, and they're doctors, lawyers, engineers, etc. And because I teach at a predominantly white school, my school is only 3% Black. They need to know these real life examples. We're studying history, but I'm constantly aware of the need to make it plain. Okay. I'm talking to the pastor again, constantly aware of the need to make it plain and say, these are real life people that demonstrate, Black intelligence, Black genius is alive and well, the spirit of excellence, the work ethic, contrary to what we're still seeing predominantly on television, Hulu, Netflix, et cetera, with a few exceptions that I want to talk about today. I want to talk about Lovecraft Country, the creator of that. But we're still seeing, drug dealers and Black folks trauma.
Yeah.
But there are also Black folks in real life who are thriving.
So Tammy, before we get to the meat of this and I ask you a couple of questions, I want to do a giveaway today. And I don't know, we've probably done this before, but we hadn't done it in a while. So get your minds ready, people. I see some new people joining us. My sister says, hey, everyone. Antoinette Ross, hey, Tony. And Miss Brenda Walker, that is Lisa Walker, my line sister's mom. So Lisa's mom is on, and I miss her because she used to be on all the time. So great seeing you. So here's the question for you guys. And you probably gonna Google, but that's fine. But whoever posts the answer first will be our winner. And I promise you, you're going to love your gift, which is sponsored by Soul Inspired. So I need for you to tell me, the first person to post in the comments, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, the first Black woman to produce, write, and act in her own movie. Okay, so we're going to give you time to do that while you're listening to Dr. Tammy. So, Dr. Tammy, today we want to empower and acknowledge the value of Black women and why they are an asset to the world. I love me some Black women.
Yes.
So, as we celebrate women leaders who can unapologetically walk in their power, we're going to highlight a few of them.
Yes.
So, you know that Black women have been breaking down barriers left and right over the years. They've been shattering these glass ceilings in education, in ministry, in sports, in politics, and so on. There are some unsung heroes that we don't hear about much, like you said earlier. In the news, you hear about the gangbangers and, you know, the criminals, but you don't hear about the great things that Black women are doing in history. Share a few of the notables with us.
Okay, so today I want to talk about some contemporary figures, current day figures. The first one is well known, especially given the most recent election. So Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, the first woman vice president of the United States, the first person of African descent, first Black person, and first person of South Asian descent. So her mother was from India, her father was from Jamaica. And she has HBCU roots. She attended Howard University. She's also an AKA. And I think the most recent shift in the right direction politically really shows the power of historically Black institutions. So I know historically Black colleges and sororities and fraternities, they came out in full support of Kamala Harris. And let's add to that, look at what Stacey Abrams did in Georgia. You know, this historic shift in electing an African-American and a Latino representatives. And let's keep in mind, Stacey Abrams is a Delta. So these political figures who are women who are doing the work, right? They're not just talking. Stacey Abrams is a force of nature. And the fact that, you know, even though her interests in being a presidential candidate, you know, it didn't really come to fruition this time around, or her interest in possibly being a vice presidential candidate didn't come to fruition, but it shows her commitment to fighting the good fight and to really combating that 4 years of dramatic regression under Trump. And I'm constantly aware, since I teach global studies, I'm constantly aware, and I was constantly aware how the world was looking at us and just shaking their heads, right? Before Trump was elected, it was around 6 months before he was elected, I was doing some research in Morocco on Jimi Hendrix. So Jimi Hendrix, rock and roll virtuoso, he spent a little time in Morocco. And I stayed at an Airbnb in Casablanca for a few days, owned by a woman originally from Italy. And she had a friend visiting from Italy. And he said to me, how in the world do you go from one of the most intelligent, compassionate, engaged presidents like Barack Obama to this candidacy of possibly electing Donald Trump? And when he said that, I said, oh, no one's taking him seriously. You know, I was out of the country. I wasn't really fully, the news that I was getting seemed like no one was taking him seriously. But I think a lot of people thought no one was taking him seriously then. Fast forward to the mess that he created and even the attack on the White House, the tragedies of people actually being killed, this unprecedented attack in terms of white supremacy actually on the Capitol itself. We know white supremacy as a domestic type of terrorism has been unfortunately alive and well since the founding of this country, and especially since the end of slavery. As African Americans were gaining some status, whites, especially poor whites, began to look at those gaining status and said, oh, when they were slaves, we knew we were better than them. But now that they are getting some money and sometimes making as much as they were or exceeding the amount, let's try to put them in their place. So that history of white supremacy, you see this progress by African Americans, then this backlash by racist whites. Progress, backlash, progress, and in that ebb and flow we're witnessing now. But the back to Black women in power, at least we have women like Stacey Abrams, and there are so many other women on the ground in terms of getting the vote out in so many different states that really are pushing for this sea change in the right direction, in which people of all ethnic backgrounds, race, gender, sexual orientation are being treated with dignity and respect. That's the direction we're going in. And it has a lot to do with these Black women in power. So those are the folks to start with, the politicians, Kamala Harris and Stacey Abrams. Would you like to comment, or do you want me to just keep going through my list? Yes.
No, I think Tim has a comment.
Yeah, let me comment there, because I like the when we look at Stacey Abrams and the fact that, yes, she ran or was trying to run for president and it didn't work. I appreciate the fact that her influence, her power, her prowess, it didn't come off the table because she wasn't in front of the camera. That her agenda, her mission kept working, and it speaks to her influence. I think the influence of a Black woman, whether they're out in front or behind the scenes, if you will, their influence is still strong and powerful. And I think we all owe her a great of gratitude and a big thanks for her work behind the scenes that helped change, or should I say is now changing, the political climate of America, and especially in Georgia. But the fact that she was still working behind the scenes speaks to that strength and influence.
I agree.
Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely think kudos to Stacey Abrams. And from a local standpoint, I've had the opportunity to meet her many years ago. And she's the same person today as she was then. And I think that's what makes her even more powerful, is because she's so down to earth. She knows what we need, and she's there fighting for the people. So I definitely agree that those are two great notables. So
can I add something to that? And the fact that she's nominated for a Nobel Prize, I'm happy to see that,
Absolutely.
And I want to, I'm an academic, so I have to paint the balanced picture, right? With Kamala Harris, she's not perfect. We know about the criticism of her record as state attorney in California in terms of the incarceration of African Americans. We know about criticism. It's just about her politics in general concerning Black people. But I feel like in this historic moment, let us focus on the present and move forward. And I think given the most the past summer, protests across the nation after the George Floyd murder by that police officer, that white police officer in Minneapolis, I appreciate the fact that Black Lives Matter activists are holding politicians accountable. And I think that while Kamala Harris is in office, especially if she hopes to become president after this vice presidential term, she is very much aware that we're watching her. Black Americans across the country are watching her and watching to see what she is committed to doing to truly address racial inequalities and to truly address health disparities, et cetera. On one hand, the election of Biden might seem like, oh, he's just another old white man, like as in the tradition of electing old white men in this country. But he's also, thankfully, in this historic moment, really electing women of color to important positions across the board, in oversight of financial matters and international relations, et cetera, that across the board, I'm hoping that this is the beginning of more momentum towards greater presence. Everyone's saying that the catchphrase representation matters in terms of seeing a representation of yourself in politics if you're a person of color. But I like to say presence matters, character matters. We don't want just any Black person in office. Look at Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court. He doesn't care about people of color. He doesn't care about working class people. I'd rather have a person who's not Black, who truly cares about working class people. It's not just a superficial surface thing about representation, but it's about character. So let's hope that Kamala Harris Kamala. I heard her name pronounced wrong so many times that now I have to correct myself. It's Kamala. So let's hope that Kamala Harris really keeps her ear to the ground and listens to her constituents and is committed to making some change for social justice, and as much as she can in that office.
That's true. That's good. That's good. So really quickly, we're going to go back to our comments live. And the question of the day was, who was the first Black woman to produce, to write, and act in her own movie? And the answer is correct, Crystal Kyler. It is Maria Williams. And I thought, she definitely paved the way. Her own movie was released in 1923. So she paved the way for Oprah, for Ava DuVernay, for all of those producers, directors, creators, Shonda Rhimes. And so we are excited to celebrate her today. I'd never heard about her until this year, reading an article in the Oprah magazine. So Maria P. Williams, we salute you today.
Nice.
And Crystal, you're getting a gift. Give me 1 second. And Soul Inspired is sponsoring our giveaway today. So we thank you, Kim Hall and Soul Inspired, for sponsoring the giveaway for today. And we will Crystal will be sending you your gift, but we're excited for Soul Inspired. And I will actually pop their link up shortly for those of you that aren't familiar with Soul Inspired. They're not a stranger to virtual conversations at all. So we will definitely share that. So back to our speaker. Speaking of Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, we have recently seen, in Fortune 500 companies, there has not been many females noted as CEOs. And recently we've had two announced, and that is Roz Brewer is going to Walgreens. So she was recently, I think, COO of Starbucks. Yes. And then the other lady's name is Thasunda Brown, who's going to TIAA. TIAA is like a retirement investment company, but they're both Fortune 500 women that are now CEOs. This, my friends, these are Black unicorns. Mm-hmm. So we're excited about that. And people are saying now that the time is now. The time is now. So Tammy, would you agree that the time is now for Black women, for women of color, to be seen for who they are and what they bring to the table? I think you said that very clearly with Stacey Abrams and, of course, our new VP. But what other women notables will we talk about today?
I agree with you. The time is now, right? The time is now. And I like the fact that even when you just talked about the first Black woman to write and produce her own film, I'm not familiar with her either, Maria P. Williams. I'm going to research her. I like the fact that you talked about contemporary Black women are standing on her shoulders, right? When we see Ava DuVernay, Oprah, et cetera. And let's add to that list. I'm happy that filmmaker, writer, director, producer Misha Green, who does science fiction, is getting a lot of attention after her brilliant series on HBO, Lovecraft Country. I think for me, that's in terms of screenwriting, it's one of the best written series I've seen to date. It's hard to describe. So if you haven't seen it, if you have access to HBO, I highly recommend seeing it. I'll do the best I can. So it's really set in a historical era in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and all the main characters are Black. They're encountering racism, but the main character Atticus comes from a legacy of supernatural powers that has a lot to do with his enslaved ancestor who, unfortunately, as is the history of this country, she was an enslaved woman that was raped by the slave master and had a son, or I'm actually not sure the gender of the child, but it's the ancestor of the main character. So with this Lovecraft Country, what you see is this brilliantly layered approach to addressing past trauma of slavery, and even the current Jim Crow racism and violence, racial violence that takes place in the contemporary time of the show, which is basically the 30s, 40s, and 50s. But these characters fight back with these supernatural powers. So in this science fiction genre, and this is co-produced by Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele, the screenwriter, director, producer of Get Out. And for Jordan Peele, he has said explicitly he's committed to getting more shows made that feature Black cast members. And I remember when he said that for the rest of his career, he plans on just doing Black casts. There was this backlash in which white people were saying, oh, that's reverse racism, et cetera. But, it makes perfect sense to me. There are a gazillion films out there that are all white casts. Mm-hmm. So why not try to balance these stories and feature the talent of these great actors? There's some great actors, including Jurnee Smollett, who's a leading lady in Lovecraft Country. And what makes this show so dynamic, it's layered. It's layered with meanings. Mm-hmm. It's layered with references to historical events, including Emmett Till, the murder of Emmett Till, who we know the sad story of. He went down south from Chicago, down south, age 14, Money, Mississippi, allegedly whistled at a white woman and was killed by white men and brutally, just brutally beaten, shot, attached to a cotton gin, thrown in the river. And his body, during the funeral, his mother was courageous enough to display his body so the world could see the atrocity of racism, racial violence. And that is addressed in Lovecraft Country. And the way that it's interwoven is just brilliant. And the way that even Black choreography is featured with some of the characters, again, it's a supernatural story. There are these twins in one episode that haunt the youngest character, and the dancing is just amazing within the tradition of African-American modern dance. We know that Catherine Dunham, early 20th century, is really the architect of isolation. Isolation is a technique in which one part of the body is moving at a different rhythm than another part of the body, which is very much a West African principle. Either of our interviewers, do either of you know how to dance West African dance by any chance?
I do not.
No, sorry, I don't. I did not take that class.
I tried to take a couple classes, but I'm not good. And so the kinesthetic intelligence. So in the field of psychology, dating back to the 90s, thinking about this concept of multiple intelligence, this idea of kinesthetic intelligence, body intelligence, that West African dancers who dance in that tradition have is just unbelievably brilliant. And so when I'm teaching about kinesthetic intelligence and dance as activism in liberation struggles in the United States and around the world, I give this funny anecdote of me taking a dance class, of all places, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And so Minneapolis is known to be a progressive place. We know with the murder of George Floyd, from what I've understood from friends who live there, Minneapolis has changed for the worse in the past 10, 15 years. But when I lived there from 1998 to 2000. It was progressive. Very small Black population. I'm thinking around 3%, but there was so much, I would say, appreciation, love, but also appropriation of Black culture. So I was in this dance class with about, I think, 40 people, and I was like one Black woman in a room with a bunch of white women dancing, and the instructor was from Senegal. The reason I tell this story in my class is I said it disproves the stereotype that all Black people can dance, because I was doing such a poor job of executing these polyrhythmic moves that the instructor walked up to me and said, "Sister, just stop." So let's come back to kinesthetic intelligence. So Black artists in America, including Black women such as Catherine Dunham, early 20th century, 1930s, 1940s, Pearl Primus, who brought West African and Caribbean dance to American stages. And keep in mind, she wasn't only trying to prove the dignity and brilliance and intelligence of these art forms to white Americans. There were plenty of African Americans, Black Americans, who had negative stereotypes of Africa at the time. So she's also trying to transform the vision of Africa in the minds of all Americans and the world. So Pearl Primus is another historical figure who transformed the way that the world sees West African dance traditions, Caribbean dance traditions, and she's puts them on Carnegie stage, right? And that in and of itself is a type of activism. She had this saying, dance is a weapon for social change. So through her art, she was pushing for racial equality and respect for people of African descent. I say the same is true for Misha Green with Lovecraft Country and her use of all Black cast, as the leading actors, and also her soundtrack. The soundtrack is Nina Simone to, there's some unpredictable elements there, including Cardi B. And by using this music, they really get at these deeper existential questions about what does it mean to be Black in America? How does white supremacy manifest itself in day-to-day interactions? And how can we challenge how we see race today and how we respond to racism?
That's interesting. I want to pinpoint the comment from Kim. She says, Tammy, I pulled out my journal where I wrote about Hippolyta when she referenced shrinking herself. By naming herself, she could be anything she wanted. I love that episode where she changed herself to be stronger, sexier, etc. I totally forgot about that part, Kim, but that was amazing how they could interweave that into, the episode, into the storyline where she could be, she traveled back in time, but she was actually morphing herself into all of these things that she could be. And we know as Black women, we're everything.
Sure. I think that was powerful too, because she had to take that journey in order to get to that place. But then I appreciated when she came back and said to her husband, gave him this explanation, and he apologized. It's kind of the way of the world that the man is out front and the woman is, although the man knows I can't do anything without you, but she's kind of secondary. But he embraced it, kind of apologized for it, but yet it affirmed, where she was. I thought all of that was great. I thought the journey, while whimsical, was very powerful.
Absolutely.
I appreciate, I'm happy you have that audience interaction, live interaction. So I appreciate Kimberly's specific points, because I agree with you. Naming yourself, that agency of deciding who you want to be for yourself on your own terms. That is a tradition that Black people in this country have done again and again as an act of resistance to racism, racial oppression. And you think about that travel and history. One of the highlights for me was when she dances with Josephine Baker.
Yes.
She dances with Josephine Baker, and it opens this world, right? You see Black folks in Harlem, and you see Black folks in Paris. And the reality is the international landscape has always been a landscape in which Black Americans have found greater freedom because there's so much racism right here in the United States. Artists like Josephine Baker, Duke Ellington, later Nina Simone, even James Baldwin had to travel abroad to feel respected, to feel as if they're treated as human beings. And here's the irony. While artists like Paul Robeson and other actors, vocalists, geniuses are traveling abroad, they're seen as American greatness.
Yeah.
They're doing this work as ambassadors to prove the greatness of America. But the outspoken ones like Paul Robeson and Josephine Baker will tell the truth and say, hey, there's racism in the United States. You need to know this. And by spreading that message, it's actually a term for this. It's called Black internationalism. So Black internationalism is when Black intellectuals, artists, et cetera, use the international stage as a platform to shame the United States into reforming. And it was quite a powerful tool because the more the word spread that the United States professes to be this progressive leader of civilization, but at the same time, barbaric lynchings are taking place. Think about Ida B. Wells as an intellectual, another Black woman, unicorn of her time.
Yes.
This journalist, activist who traveled to Europe, especially England, to talk about lynching, to talk about racism. And she turned the concept of civilization on its head. So white America professes to be the head of civilization, and they're doing these barbaric things. Look, in detail, killing Black men, hanging them from trees, castrating them, burning them. It's as a spectator sport, burning, taking souvenirs, pieces of fabric. This is America, people. So when people say the attack on the White House is un-American, I say, no. This is America, my people. This long history, but we're not going anywhere. We, as African Americans, people of African descent, this is our country. We built the White House. We're going to stay here. We're going to keep fighting. And I see artists like Misha Green and even the beautiful, brilliant gymnast my sister introduced me to, Nia Davis, UCLA. I see these as examples of Black geniuses say, we're here to stay, and we're proud to be here. Recognize.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned the poet Amanda Davis.
Oh, well, there's the gymnast Nia Dennis at UCLA. Then there's the poet Amanda Gorman I want to talk about too.
Well, go ahead and talk about Amanda. And Tim, you jump in if you have any questions. We're definitely over our time, but we're going to get all this goodness in. Let's get it all in.
Okay. Time flies. So quickly, Amanda Gorman, who was the poet featured at the Biden-Harris inauguration, she graduated from my alma mater, Harvard, represent. She recited a poem she wrote called "The Hill We Climb." The piece I especially appreciate is how she talks about overcoming a speech impediment. And I gave another talk for a different program, and I talked about her struggle with her speech impediment and also Joe Biden's struggle with stuttering as a kid. What I embrace in the selection of her as this artist who is young, who is a Black woman, who represents intellect and hope at this critical moment. I also embrace the imperfections, because sometimes in her voice, you can hear remnants of her speech impediment. And I appreciate that because it shows the imperfections that we all have, but we need to continue to show up and persevere and work through it. And that in and of itself, she was raised by a single mom who was an English teacher. You hear her biography and you say, oh, she's a Black unicorn. Her mom is a Black unicorn. We know that behind all these Black unicorns are parents and families and communities that nurture and encourage and hold all these people up. And I appreciate her voice at this moment because we need that hope. Let's also, I can't resist talking about Dennis, UCLA gymnast who
Yeah,
is
Davis.
Dennis.
It's Dennis. Okay.
Dennis. Nia Dennis, UCLA gymnast. She is known for her floor routines have gone viral. She's known for her floor routines, dancing to Beyonce, even Kendrick Lamar, even Tupac. She has this gesture where she puts the crown on her head, and it puts me in mind of even Basquiat as a graffiti fine artist who plays around with the crown. And the fact that she's being recognized for her athletic ability, her talent, her intellect. And I pay attention to how the commentators talk about her because in sports, sometimes you will hear commentators say things like, oh, this Black athlete in football is so athletic, but maybe not as intellectual. Let's think about football and quarterbacks. You got to watch the way white commentators talk. I'm still researching this gymnast, Nia, but from what I've heard, the commentators are recognizing her technique and her intellect. And the fact that she's integrating these Black soundtracks that are protest songs in this moment, including Kendrick Lamar, and celebrations of Black culture, including Beyonce. All of that I see as a type of resistance, resilience, redemption. And she's a Black unicorn to watch. She's exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, and she's from my home state, Ohio. I just learned she's from Columbus, Ohio.
Really?
The Midwest is the best.
I want to go back, Dr. Brown, to I think the profundity of the parallel and the contrast of Amanda Gorman and Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
I think thank you for bringing that out. I think that's absolutely amazing. We see so many contrasts there with his age, her age, of course, ethnicity on both ends. But what it does show us is that challenge has no color. The commonality of challenge is on both ends. So we have an older white man who had a speech impediment and a younger Black woman are now on the same platform. Mm-hmm. So regardless of what color you are, the challenges that we have are the same challenges that white America, Asian Americans, whomever have, and we still can overcome and stand together on the same platform because the same platform came from the same challenge. I think that was a great way to expose that. Thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. And I think we have to continue to tell the story like that to our young people, because so many young people get discouraged by what they think is their learning deficit or their deficit, which we can overcome those things in so many ways. So this is a great example. Thank you both for bringing that to light. I'm sorry, I'm reading comments at the same time. Belinda Reese says, challenge has no color, nor does triumph. That is so true. Daryl Turner says, I think the fact that she is young is paramount, especially during the onslaught of the lack of appreciation of our younger generation. Very true. Very true. Nia Dennis is exceptional. And I actually saw her on a whim, just flipping the television or walking by the television. And I saw this girl doing these moves. And I was like, oh, that's cute. That must be a high school show, a high school, And when I turned back around and saw that she was at UCLA and she was able to put her spin on her performance, I was in awe, totally in awe. So thanks for bringing her up as well. So the one thing I wanted to do today is make sure that we celebrate all of our Black unicorns. And of course, we can't get to them all because there's so many. And each of you are unicorns in yourself. You may not have manifested it yet, or we just may not know it, but we celebrate you today. So one other historical figure I wanted to bring up when we were talking about politics is Jane Bolin. Are you familiar with her, Tammy?
No. No.
So Jane Bolin was the first Black woman to attend Yale Law School, and she became the first Black judge in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So found that to be very interesting. That was going to be our other uh, question challenge. But since we're out of time, I just figured I'd drop that nugget on everyone and let them know that Jane Bolin in herself is a Black unicorn. And that is a history fact.
Well,
So I
Candy,
want to, I'm sorry,
can I
go
say
ahead.
one thing real quick? Can I
Mhm.
celebrate as a man? I want to celebrate the women for being amazing, for Black women being amazing. With all of the heroes or sheroes that we celebrated today, what amazes me with them is just not what they bring to the table, but the fact that they are still the doors of life. And so they have children and they have mothered great children and they still do great things while being great mothers. And so, for everything that I've done in my life, I've had significant women. I think I'm probably more my foundation is probably built by the women in my life more than anything, from my mom to my sisters to some of my friends' moms who spoke into and pour into my life daily and weekly. And so I want to celebrate from the brothers. I want to celebrate you women for doing amazing, amazing things and for simply being great and for loving us and putting up with us and trying to be delicate with our egos and all of that. That in and of itself is an art. And I just want to say thank you for
It
that.
is.
It
It is.
is.
Thank you. We appreciate that. But I just have to piggyback and say that is an art.
It
But
is.
all of us have not mastered yet. I'm not
You
going to
have
say
not. No, just kidding. Many have not. Not you, but many have, as in women. Not you, but women.
no,
Wow.
I don't think I've mastered that, but I think about my mother, my grandmother, and the grandmothers, the great grandmothers, that have done an amazing job
Yeah,
at mastering that and being that encourager. We are the best kept secret.
I agree.
Tammy, do you have any closing words to leave us with before we leave everyone today?
I'll just say, keep learning, keep educating yourself, keep teaching others. I love that saying, each one teach one. When you learn something new, keep nurturing, developing relationships with young people. And I think this time of living through a pandemic has made us more mindful of being grateful for those around us, for our communities, for our family who love us. And I'll just say, keep that up and keep people in mind who might be living by themselves or feeling a little disconnected. So, as we're talking about Black unicorns, strong Black women, keep in mind Black women also get tired. So, support them, nurture them. I have a very good family friend who's a caregiver, and at her 70th birthday, the doctor who works with her husband said, look, this is hard work. She gets tired. And I took it to heart. And I made sure after that, I put action behind my commitment to take it to heart. I made sure I took this family friend to dance performances in the city. I took her and my mom to see Black violin, etc. So we just have to look out for these Black unicorns and know they're special, they're strong, but they get tired too.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
very true.
Yeah. And
Um,
black unicorns are not just on the stage. They live on our street. They're in our community. Yeah.
that is so true. Thank
Mhm.
you. Thank you both for joining me today. I want to salute the Black unicorn in you. Um, I want to say happy Black History Month and remember that Black history is 365. We should celebrate each other 365 days of the year and make sure that you continue to do your research and celebrate those that have paved the way before us. I want to say thank you for Soul Inspired for sponsoring our giveaway today. I also want to say thank you to Nathalie Nelson Parker and I Love My HBCU, my happy mail that I received today. So this has been an awesome day. Thank you for spending your time with us. Everybody kind of stayed in. We went over a little bit. And I appreciate that. So this was some good stuff. Dr. Tammy Brown, we appreciate you dropping knowledge on us. You're not a stranger to virtual conversations, so we hope that you will come back again. Thank
Sure.
you to my co-host, Tim. I appreciate you for sitting with me today.
Always.
Listen, y'all, I want to make sure that you make it a God day. Have a good weekend, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Pastor Tim will be back with us in 2 weeks. Isn't that right?
Thank
We'll be
you.
back in 2 weeks. And I promise you, it'll be good. Have a good one, y'all.
Have a good one.
Bye.